Hey, metalheads, this is Steve Zetro Souza from Exodus, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys an old school album review. And today we're going to be looking into this album's 30th anniversary, which is today, and it's from one of my personal favorite thrash metal bands ever. And I don't think really anybody, especially this album, nobody really talks about. But as you can see below the title, today we're going to be looking into Impact is Imminent by Exodus. This was the band's fourth album, released on June 21st, 1990 through Capitol Records. Now, Impact is Imminent is the first album to be featured on, like I mentioned, their Capitol Records. This is also the first album that had a little bit of a lineup change. They had the first album to feature, well, in my opinion, one of the best metal drummers and one of the most underrated metal drummers, in my opinion, John Tempesta, who would also play in like Testament and White Zombie and so on and so forth. And this is the last album to feature their bass player, Rod McKillop. And this album, when compared to the previous album, Fabulous Disaster, which I think is probably still my favorite Exodus album. But this album is a pretty good album. I know, especially like from what I've heard, this album has received a lot of negative reviews, and I don't even know why. Why? Yeah, I just think it's a pretty good album. Although I do think some of the songs are kind of filler, and I feel like they could have done more, but it's still a pretty damn good album. And the first thing to note is Zetro's vocals. Zetro just sounds really great. As always, like he pretty much, in my opinion, still has the same voice then as he does now, which is kind of nuts. There's very few vocalists that still have the same sound, especially from a few decades ago to now, which is kind of insane that he still has that same voice. I mean, I could also add Bobby Blitz from Overkill, probably still has that kind of voice. The guitar work on this album is tight. Gary Holt and Rick Hunholt's guitar playing, just like the riffs they come up with, and just the soloing is pretty great. The bass from Rod McKillop, since it's the last album he did with the band, is pretty solid. But he definitely really stepped it up on here. Drumming wise, John Tempstead does a really great job on the drums. So without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is the title track, Impact is Imminent, which kicks the album off with a bang. Which is pretty much one of the best songs in the whole catalog of Exodus. And I just love like the guitars sound pretty crunchy, and just the irreverent snarls from Zetro just pretty much go together really well. Then we go into AWOL, which has some really great riffs in this whole song, and I really love like the verses kind of sound a little bit stressed, and it has some really kind of like faster like vocals. And this song is pretty good. Lunatic Parade, which is pretty much the most like groovy type of song on here, and it's just a really catchy and especially something you'll just memorize right there. And I just love that, like the melodies created by the guitars will just remain in your head for a while. Within the Walls of Chaos, which pretty much has sort of like typical thrash metal riffs with a little bit of like grooviness to it. Especially like reaching sort of like the climax by the chorus, and sort of like a really great guitar solo. And this is pretty much, the tempo wise, it's just very mid-pace, and I just love how sort of like, while it is mid-paced, I feel like the band sort of like keeps sort of like the high like intensity even like during sort of like the more sort of like weirder parts in here. Objection Overrules, which pretty much gives more fuel to the fire. You're and I think it's a great song. It's just a very fast song, and I just love how it's good to notice like how often the band sort of like settles down on sort of like faster kind of songs instead of like focusing on sort of the pure, just uncontaminated like up tempo in here. Only Death Decides. I just love the guitars on this song. It just sounds so brutal and heavy, and this song is another mid-tempo song, and probably, in my opinion, probably the best song on the album, or if not one of the best. Heads They Win, Tails You Lose. It's a pretty good song. I just like it. Changing of the Guard, which is a very fast-paced song, and just manages to maintain a faster and just furious tempo. What goes through sort of like a whole like twists and turns in here. And then we get to the last song on the album, which is appropriately titled Thrash Under Pressure, which is just really just, it's a less than 3 minutes. It goes unbelievably fast and brutal, and I just feel like everything the band did put out to speed on like the last song is pretty much all on here to just pretty much destroy us. And it's a perfect track to end this on this good album from this band. Now, overall, Impact is Imminent is a pretty good album. One of the most underrated Exodus albums, in my opinion. And so if I were to give this album a score, I'm probably going to give this probably a solid 8.5 out of 10. It's pretty good, really good album. Like, I just wish people would talk about this album more. So yeah, that's my review of Impact is Imminent, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.